I'm Mike Uyak. I love to try new things, and I've had culinary adventures all around the world as well as right at home. I've had really wonderful food, as well as some really horrible food. I'd like to share some of my adventures with you, and we'll see if I have what it takes to fix whatever goes wrong. This is Recipe Redemption.
Howdy everyone, and welcome to another edition of Recipe Redemption. Now recently on social media, I was dared, nay, double dog dared, to make a recipe for a cheesy Frankfurter soup. Now, you take a look at this recipe, I don't know that it's going to be really that bad. Because if you think about it, you're sauteing some onions and celery, sure, adding flour, and you do it in butter, I believe, and you add flour. Well, you just made a roux with vegetables in it, but you made a roux, and you add stock and milk to that, and then, okay, shredded American cheese. Not great, but you've just made a cheese sauce with vegetables in it. And you actually add some frozen mixed vegetables in as well. And then you top it with slices of hot dog. Yeah. Anybody who has pumped that sort of plastic stadium cheese onto a chili dog kind of knows these flavors already. A processed cheese on hot dog is really not that unfamiliar a flavor to Americans. It's just we don't really think of it as a soup. And this is supposed to be very definitely a soup. So, why not? Let's try it.
So here we go. As the recipe says, we're going to start off by melting some butter, into which I add some chopped onion and celery. I'm just going to sweat this. Don't really want any color. Just want to heat them through until they become translucent. There, that should be good. And this is about a teaspoon of all-purpose flour that I'm adding to this. Once again, I'm making a roux. I personally don't always like doing it this way, because there's still a lot of moisture left in the vegetables, but it should be okay. And I'm switching to a whisk here because once it's had time to cook that flour a little bit, it's going to have just a tiny bit of color. Mostly I'm just trying to cook that raw flour flavor out of it. But I'm using a whisk now because now is the time to add some chicken stock. And I had about a half a cup there. As a reminder, I am doing a single serving of this. And a half a cup of half and half. That's our dairy component. I'm going to whisk this, continuing to heat it until it just gets up to almost to a simmer. There we go. At which point, the recipe calls for shredded American cheese. I had the option of either going for American cheese slices or a 3-pound block. Those were the choices I had at my grocery store. I didn't want that much American cheese around, so we're going with the slices. It's fine. I'm just adding them one at a time, making sure that they melt completely into the soup before I add the next one, so you don't end up with these chunks of cheese floating around in there. Make sure that it's actually well incorporated. Once you've melted all your cheese, add about, in this case, about a quarter cup of mixed vegetables, peas and carrots, and serve in a bowl. And don't forget, you're garnishing with sliced grilled hot dog.
And just like that, in 20-25 minutes, Now, mind you, I was making one serving, so if you made a whole pot of this, it would take a little bit longer, but not by a whole lot. Frankfurter Cheese Soup. I may have, in my attempt to make this a single serving of this, I might have gotten the proportions a little different. The mixture is very definitely soupy. It does not pour like queso does, which is actually a good thing because I want it to be more like a soup. But let's just see how it tastes. And it tastes very hot because I just poured it. It tastes okay. I mean, I grew up eating American cheese. And to discover that it is, for all intents and purposes, Velveeta, just in individual slice form, took me aback a little bit, but then, I realized what's the difference. It's a highly processed cheese food. Now, American cheese, they can legally call it cheese. It actually has milk in it. Velveeta does too, but it's more processed, I guess. American cheese, at least in the beginning, it was like a very, 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 very mild form of cheddar, but sort of, not really. The color, it did not come from the actual cheddaring process or anything like that. It was annatto, I think. It's an additive. But I grew up on it, so I'm actually used to it. And trying it again after a few years of distance from it makes me realize just how salty American cheese is. It's actually quite salty when you come down to it. But so are hot dogs. It's honestly not that bad. Again, a little salty. In a way, the vegetables are almost kind of a textural distraction. I mean, they're there. They do add flavor. But they're bits floating around in your cheese and hot dogs. You're not really eating this because, you're health conscious. It's definitely a recipe that came around to use up ingredients that you already have in the house in new and innovative ways. I'm for it. It's not bad. Am I going to be making this on a regular basis? No. Because this technically qualifies as food, but really, you want a higher rent version of this? Okay.
First step in our soup is to cook off the sausage. These are mildly spicy Italian sausages that I've cut the casing off of. I find that it's a little bit easier, eventually, to break these up in the cooking process into bite-sized pieces, rather than cooking them fully and then taking them out and slicing them. I just prefer to do it this way. It gives it a little bit more of a rustic look if you have these sort of rougher chunks of sausage. Once it's all browned, I'm going to take that out of the pan and put it into, well, I don't actually show you this on camera, but there's a pot of chicken stock sitting off to the side, about a half a quart. I guess that would be a pint, wouldn't it? Anyway, put the sausage in there, but I'm reserving the grease from the sausages because they'll add a lot of flavor to my onions and celery here. I'm pretty much just going to do this exactly the same way as the Frank's and Cheese Soup, but with better ingredients. So, once I've added the celery and onion into the stock pot, I get my saucier out, and it's time to make a bechamel. Or actually, it's going to be a mornay, because it's going to be a cheese sauce. So, melted butter. Once it stops foaming and starts to smell nutty, add about an equivalent weight of flour. I probably could have added a little more. This is a little runny, but it's okay. Cooked it for a few minutes until it turns kind of a nice blonde brown. And then water. I could use stock, but since the stock is already in the soup, I'm just doing water and some milk, about half and half. And whisk to combine and heat through. And once it comes up to a simmer, I'm gonna add my cheese. And instead of American cheese, I've got shredded Gruyere here. It's gonna give it a nice bit of flavor. I'm gonna set my Mornay off to the side for a second, and here's the stock pot. It's got the onions and celery, it's got the sausage in it, and now I'm adding kale. And it ends up being about a pound and a half of chopped, de-stemmed kale leaves. Yes, they'll all fit, they'll all wilt down. And once there's room for it, I'm adding the Mornay sauce into the stock pot and stirring to combine.
So, significant improvement. Obviously, not as cheesy as the, Frankfurter cheesy soup that I originally started out with. More soupy, but it's the same basic idea. You got some vegetables, you got some sausages of some sort in a broth that you thicken with cheese. It's just different proportions, better ingredients, comes up with an overall better experience. I have to say, I have to reiterate, the cheesy Frankfurter soup that I started off with wasn't that bad. Disturbingly, it really wasn't. It wasn't that bad. Bad for you. I'm not even going to go through the calculations of what the nutritional breakdown for that soup would be. My rendition of it is going to be significantly healthier just from the standpoint of less poundage of cheese. Um, I probably could have had a little bit more cheese. It sort of disappeared, but it did lend a noticeable richness to the overall soup. Could have added a little bit more, but not by a whole lot. I liked it the way it was. Um, not quite so dairy intensive. The addition of the better sausage certainly helped a lot. Better vegetables than just your frozen mixed vegetables. Um, I liked it. I think that's probably going to appear on the menu again at some point. But so, what do you think about the original cheesy Frankfurter soup, as well as my more, I won't say traditional, but more reminiscent of an Italian cheese and sausage soup? Um, what did you think of it? What would you have done differently? And do you actually make a dish like this on your own? Please let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you have suggestions, also please send them my way. I am always open to trying new things. So until next time, thank you for watching. I'm Mike Uyak, and this has been Recipe Redemption. Take care.